Hey, welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers over at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. Joining me right now, Chris Biderman of the Sacramento Bee, and we're going to chat with you real quick before we get to our 49ers Cowboys preview. We're going to real quick talk about our friends over at Lamb Chops. SGLambchops.com is the website. Follow them on Instagram at SGLambchops. Promo code Candlestick20 at the website for 20% off your order. T-shirt, hoodie, shorts. I have a new obsession. They have a snapback, it turns out. I've never seen that on the website before, but they have a snapback and I need it. So,
new stuff coming for the fall I've seen on social that I'm pretty excited about. Might have to dive into.
Yeah, of course. Get a Lamb Chops hoodie in time for hoodie season. Use Candlestick20 when you're there. Candlestick20, promo code Candlestick20 when you're there, and get 20% off your order today at sglambchops.com. We're also sponsored by Cooperage Brewing. CooperAgeBrewing.com is the website. They make great beer, including Candlestick Chronicles Hazy IPA. I can't wait to get home and drink some. I have a bunch of it in my fridge. And I've been drinking beer here this week. Not that good. It's just fine. I'm in Key West, by the way. But the beer's just okay. I can't wait to get home to my Candlestick Chronicles.
Yeah, Key West is decidedly not Northern California when it comes to beer. Sources say.
If I'm ranking beer scenes, it's North Bay 1, Key West 2, 3 is like NA.
Yeah, I've never been to Key West. I've spent a little bit of time in Florida. The time in Florida, I do remember kind of struggling to find some good quality IPAs. As you can see, if you're streaming on YouTube, we have the Candlestick Chronicles Hazy IPA can up, and it's a beaut.
The key for me,
it looks really good,
is the 100% Citra hops. I love a Citra hop. It's just a kind of like light citrusy flavor.
Sure.
With the hazy. Oh, it's delicious.
No doubt.
Shout out. Cooperage Brewing. CooperageBrewing.com.
Shout out to our friends at Cooperage. Always good.
They'll ship a case of beer directly to your door if you're 21 and over, and in the state of California. It's the best way to acquire beer, so go do that right now at CooperageBrewing.com. All right, let's get to this 49ers Cowboys Sunday Night Football preview. Hey, Chris, what's your favorite 49ers Cowboys memory?
Growing up, I grew up a 49ers fan, and the early 90s, or I guess mid 90s teams were the reason I basically got into sports and this wild business that we're in. And so the 94 championship game against the Cowboys was probably my favorite sports memory growing up. And Eric Davis with the interception. I don't know if anybody listening remembers the steak sandwiches that they used to have on the lowest part of the concourse when you entered the stadium through the ticket gate. Before you went up any of the escalators, they had this big giant grill where they would do steak sandwiches. And I want to say they were tri-tip, but they would have these sandwiches on sourdough bread. And my dad and I would get them basically every game. And they were super good. And so it was like a lot of nostalgia, late 90s for me around the 49ers and growing up and being we had season tickets, I think, from, I was 7 to probably about 13 or 14. Didn't miss a game, including preseason. We took a lot of pride in that. And then, there was traveling baseball and all of that later on in life. But in the fall, not to brag, year round.
Sick brag.
It led to a career in journalism and podcasting. So, no, but that was sort of the highlight for me growing up in childhood was Niners Cowboys, and obviously that 94 game, or I guess it would have been January 95. And obviously the Niners went on to win the Super Bowl a few weeks later. My dad's car got towed that game. As I'm sure many listeners know, the parking lot in Candlestick Park was a little bit hectic back in the day.
A little bit.
And we used to get there plenty early, but for the NFC title game, It was far more crowded than usual, and we had like a normal spot. We would drive in and sort of park in like a vicinity in the same route. That route was unavailable to us for whatever reason, I remember. And then so we kind of parked what seemed like a parking spot at the end of an aisle, right? It just and there was no real demarcation whether or not it was a spot. So we go in, we have our steak sandwiches, obviously like an amazing game. Emmett Smith's dealing with a hamstring injury. Steve Young's dropping dimes in the corner to Jerry Rice for touchdowns. Eric Davis is pick six early on, setting the tone. Celebrate the Niners going to the Super Bowl and all that, finally beating the Cowboys. Go back to the parking lot, cannot find the car. Car is gone. And so I think I was 7 years old, and my dad was far more upset about the situation than than I was. But yeah, it was. I think we got back super late, super late, and but no, it was still worth it. It was fun, and obviously we didn't go to Miami or anything for the Niners Chargers Super Bowl. But Steve Young goes on to have 6 passes, and Ricky Waters was a favorite. William
6
Floyd
touchdown
was a
passes.
favorite. Yeah, 6, not terrible.
Yeah, it's
Not
pretty
terrible.
good.
Pulled the monkey off his back.
Yep. Was it Gary Plummer that did it?
Yes.
Shout out
Yeah,
Gary
that was
Plummer.
Gary Plummer.
Shout out GP.
That team with Deion Sanders and all that. Anyway, I've been going on for far too long, but that was like a very vivid memory in childhood, and was super meaningful at that point. And obviously, I had to more or less give up being a fan in the broader sense of the word, and trying to be a Big J journalist and covering the team, and
Sure.
trying to be as objective as possible. But that's really the reason why I bring it up is because it was that team, that 94 team, that really made me just sort of become sports obsessed, and ultimately that led to a career in sports journalism, which included covering the Niners. So I'm pretty pretty lucky for all that, and it speaks to what sports can mean to a lot of people.
I was too young to have a memory like that.
Were you even born yet?
I was 4.
Okay.
I was about 4.5 in January of '95. So I don't have a real vivid memory of the like rivalry as when it was like at its peak. But I got to tell you, Ezekiel Elliott playing center the year after Dak Prescott slid the clock out, both in playoff games, just 2 like unbelievable endings. And the fact that it was Mike McCarthy both times as the coach who had that happen, that was really great. So those are the two most recent ones are the ones that stand out for me. Oh, Terrell Owens on the Star, actually.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, T.O. on the Star, I think is the one for me.
I think also, a lot of people forget how good Terrell Owens was, like in his peak.
Dude, I had a tweet go viral recently, not to brag, and I tweeted something about Terrell Owens' season with the Bengals. He's 37 and he had like 900 yards in 14 games. And it turned into, people just replying with, that's why he's the GOAT, or he's the top. The amount of people that just have zero respect for how freaking good at football Terrell Owens was is insane. Like, there were a lot of people who were like, he's a top 3 receiver all time. And it's like, you know what? I will accept that argument. I am there. But there were people who were like, he's not even top 10. Like, what are we doing? Like, that's crazy. He was unbelievable, dude.
He was like a physical marvel. Remember just like what he would be like after the catch. Like he was almost like if Derrick Henry were like a super dynamic receiver.
Yes.
That's what T.O. felt like back in his heyday. And obviously, like I think the reason why T.O. has become such a sort of polarizing figure has been around the Hall of Fame discussion. And I think the Hall of Fame discussion is largely like the reason why he was somewhat of a controversial pick, or at least not a first ballot pick, was probably because writers look at it and say like he more or less kind of left like nuclear craters in his wake. whether it be when he left the 49ers or when he left the Eagles or when he left the Cowboys. Like
Sure.
he was difficult to deal with, and that was like a big a big factor into
Mm-hmm.
why I think people were slow to vote him into the Hall of Fame. But I don't think anybody like the off the field stuff and the locker room stuff really matters, right? And like ultimately why one of the big reasons why the 49ers are as good as they are is because they have a good culture, right? They have a really strong locker room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a substantial part of it. And anyone who would talk about maybe that being overrated in terms of like weighing that versus talent, I would point to like the 2014 49ers and say like that team had more talent than any other team in the Jim Harbaugh era. But it had the worst record of Jim Harbaugh's era because it was just like basically a shit show behind the scenes, like just a cluster of like constant conflict between the front office and Jim Harbaugh and all that.
Sure.
And it basically just derailed the season, despite that being a super talented team relative to the other teams that made deep playoff runs that Jim Harbaugh had. So I think the reason why TO's history or legacy has changed it a little bit, and maybe people forgot of how dominant of a force he was, is because of the off the field stuff and because of the Hall of Fame voting thing being a story that sort of overshadowed and maybe replaced some of the memories that people have in terms of how dominant he was.
He made every team he was on better. That's
Yeah.
that's the end of it for me. He was really, really good. So, anyways, 49ers Cowboys, am I right?
The talking about Mike McCarthy and those decisions at the end of those last two playoff games, I think is really where we should probably start, because I think that's where the 49ers have the biggest advantage over the Cowboys
I
is
would agree.
probably pure coaching.
I agree.
Kyle Shanahan, for as much guff as he's received over the years about end of half situations or fourth down situations, or it doesn't feel like, and I guess maybe you could point to the Super Bowl a little bit, but I would argue like their issues late in the Super Bowl or late in the Rams NFC Championship game weren't about Kyle Shanahan screwing up the play calling or anything like that. It was just kind of like the 49ers getting beat at critical points, right? The offensive line getting dominated by Aaron Donald or Jimmy Garoppolo, or the like Mike Person getting dominated by Chris Jones, right? Like there are issues that the 49ers have had late in games that feel like personnel issues, whereas the Cowboys, particularly in the playoff losses to the 49ers late, have just had like coaching blunders. Just, and not like it really would have mattered last year. I don't think there was a play where the Cowboys were going to go 85 yards or whatever they needed to in one play.
Right.
But like having Ezekiel Elliott snap it and Azeez Al-Shire just knock him over. And it was, that's
Just a classic overthink.
classic.
And then the throw just immediately gets blown up.
Yeah.
Didn't even get a lateral in.
Yeah.
Just a weird play. No, I would tend to agree with you. And then McCarthy took on play calling duties this year, and it's really clear that, or it seems to me, based on what I've read and what I've heard, just listening to people talk about the Cowboys who know things about the Cowboys, is that Kellen Moore, their former offensive coordinator, kind of wanted to modernize the offense, and Mike McCarthy does not. And you go look at what Dak Prescott does well, and what he doesn't do well. And one of the things Dak Prescott is very good at is pushing the ball down the field, like throwing the ball deep. He's very accurate and he's very good at reading defenses and then putting the ball in the air down the field. Dallas this year Prescott this year, I should say, has thrown 11 passes of 20 plus yards, which is like nothing. And then you go look at his ADOT overall, and he is at 6.2 on his average depth of target. 6.2 yards. Basically, everything is underneath in the short or at or behind the line of scrimmage. That's where so much of the Cowboys passing game happens. And then McCarthy's still one of those establish the run guys. And I don't get it. I don't know what he's trying to do, because he was supposed to be having this renaissance as a coach where he spent all this time with Pro Football Focus and he's into analytics and this and that. And it's just really clear he's not. And I don't think the style of football he wants to play is necessarily a winning style of football. And okay, they blow out the Giants, that's great, and their offense looked really good against the Jets, but then they looked terrible against the Cardinals, and I think had some late game play calls that really didn't make much sense in that one. And then they go out and they beat the heck out of the Patriots, but you have a Patriots team that A, might not be very good, and B, gave them a couple of touchdowns with turnovers. So I buy Dallas because their defense is really good and they have a ton of talent on offense. But to your point, the biggest flaw, I think, with this Cowboys team, and the reason I don't believe in them, is because of their head coach.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I think that's their biggest flaw overall. I think one thing that's interesting about Dak Prescott and just looking at his numbers, this is pretty clearly his best season in terms of completion percentage, which isn't, I'm not saying this is his best season by any stretch, but best season in terms of completion percentage, right? Career high, 71% of his passes completed. His yards per attempt, which is largely a function of the percentage of passes you complete, is the lowest of his career. So he's completing passes at the highest rate of his career, but the average yards per attempt is the lowest, which indicates that he's just not pushing the ball downfield at the same rate. And Brandon Cooks hasn't given them a whole lot this year so far. You only have CeeDee Lamb. You don't have Amari Cooper anymore. I don't really know what to make of the Cowboys offense, because I think Dak Prescott is probably a better quarterback than his numbers would indicate, although he is a guy who threw 25 interceptions combined between 2021 and 2022. And so, he's only thrown one pick so far this year. So at least you can make the case he's controlling the ball a little bit better. But I'm with you. A Mike McCarthy team, the Niners have beaten Mike McCarthy teams forever, it feels like.
Yeah.
Particularly in big games. The times that Mike McCarthy has beaten the Niners were Monday night in 2018 when it was CJ Beathard going up against Aaron Rodgers, and even the Niners almost won that game.
The Niners should have won that game.
So
they had the lead late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. So I don't, I think my fear, if you're the 49ers, your fear of the Cowboys is definitely on the other side. It's, Micah Parsons against Colton McKivitz. Really. I mean, that to me is it. The Cowboys have arguably the best pass defense in the NFL. Yeah. Obviously losing Diggs for the season with that torn ACL in practice a few weeks ago hurts really bad. But they still have a lot of good players in the secondary. I think, the Niners, Browns, and Cowboys quite clearly have the best defensive fronts in the NFL, or at least defensive lines. I would think the Niners have better linebackers overall. I think Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa is more or less a wash. Although you can make the case that Parsons has been better than Bosa so far this season.
Sure.
But it's not to say Bosa is not capable of having 3 sacks on Sunday. So I think, to me, this game for Dallas to win, they just have to dominate the trenches on both sides, but particularly pushing Purdy off of his spot and make it so they take away the short passing game, create third and long situations where you allow Micah Parsons to pin his ears back and Brock Purdy has to do a 5 or 7 step drop. And you give the pass rush time to get home. Because if the 49ers, I don't know if there's a team in the NFL, frankly, that can beat the 49ers if the 49ers are being successful on first and second down.
I would agree.
They have too many weapons. Kyle Shanahan's bag of plays that gets the ball out of Purdy's hands quickly is just so deep that, third and 4 is much less of an issue for the 49ers than third and 12.
Right. That's the case for a lot of teams, but
yeah, no, right. And I'm not trying to be this is like super
No, no,
smart
no.
analysis
Right.
that no one else
This is
can
where,
figure
but
out. But
this
like
is
this is what it looks like when the 49ers lose. It's that they either turn the ball over or they're just they're taking sacks on third down because they're not winning enough on first and second down.
yeah, and that's just to. This is the whole Brock Purdy thing. Is you start to see his physical limitations in spots like 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 14.
Right.
And that's why staying ahead of the sticks is so important because that allows him to continue to be really, really good. So I think with the 49ers, it's important for every team, but it feels like more important with San Francisco. But like I said, important for everything. I have a Micah Parsons thing I wanted to run by you.
Mm-hmm.
Micah Parsons is tied for the league lead in pressures right now with 27. He's also tied with Max Crosby with 4 sacks, right? He has rushed the passer 34 fewer times than Crosby. And he has the same amount of pressures and the same amount of sacks. He has the same amount of pressures and 1 more sack than Aiden Hutchinson, who has 57 more pass rushes than he does.
He's really good.
That's insane, dude. That's ridiculous. Michael Parsons never rushes the passer, basically. And he's that productive. I shouldn't say never, but yeah, with him and DeMarcus Lawrence, I just their defensive line is really, really good. And if they get a 25% better performance on offense, if they get Dak Prescott just to not turn the ball over, they could play the exact same game they played in the divisional playoff game last year and probably win.
Yeah.
But again, that means Dak not turning it over. It means you're hitting a couple of deep balls to CeeDee Lamb, which the 49ers have not given up a ton of explosive plays this year, and Dallas has not thrown a ton of them. So, and you also have Kyle Shanahan adjusting to what they're throwing at him defensively. So,
yeah, agreed. Like it's going to take, for me, like we haven't seen the Niners. Obviously, they're undefeated so far, but you remember the last few years. And again, this isn't like groundbreaking football analysis, so I'm not trying to sound like Mr. Smart Guy here, but like when the 49ers have lost games, a lot of it has come down to turnovers.
mm-hmm.
And that's really been the biggest reason why, like you can go back and look, there's almost a 1-to-1 correlation between games that they've lost and games that they've lost the turnover battle.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And to me, looking at this game, the only place where I think Dallas has a significant advantage is their defensive line against the 49ers offensive line overall.
Yeah. Yep.
And like that, like forcing, like pressuring Brock Purdy, hitting Brock Purdy, that's the way you force turnovers.
Yep.
And so for me, like that is where the Cowboys could potentially win this game, is if they dominate the 49ers line up front. They rip a fumble from Deebo Samuel or something. They get a strip sack deep in 49ers territory and get a touchdown out of it and win by 4, right? That's the formula for the Cowboys. But on the other hand, like Kyle Shanahan has proven to be one of, if not the best coaches in the NFL to scheme against pass protection deficiencies, right? Like to find ways to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand quickly. And in essence, that's like how the 49ers are built, right? You get so many good players with the ball in their hand, including Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey, that like all you have to do is get the ball out of the quarterback's hand quickly and let those guys run. And that's how the 49ers are built. So in essence, you can make the case like the 49ers are built for this type of game too.
Right.
So I think like the 49ers are better. And they've been the better team throughout the season. I think Brock Purdy is playing at a higher level than Dak Prescott. And like, look, I know people would rank Prescott over Purdy. I don't really care about quarterback rankings. I think objectively, if you just look at the 4 games that they've played, that Brock Purdy is just playing better football than Dak Prescott. I think the numbers say it. I think the eye test says it. I think it's pretty much unequivocal. I think if you are ranking quarterbacks, you're probably looking at body of work and pedigree and all of that. And then you say, well, Dak Prescott's more talented than Brock Purdy. Sure.
Yeah.
You want to make the case based on talent alone. I would argue that like playing the position might be the most underrated talent when it comes to being a quarterback. I think
Mhm.
that's one thing that maybe we're learning about this Brock Purdy, like the way he's discussed, is that like playing the position or the ability to play the position is an underrated talent in terms of the way quarterbacks are viewed, because everybody looks
Yep.
at size and athleticism and arm talent and arm strength and all that. So it's like, what about the way he's actually playing quarterback? Like that I feel like is getting a little bit underrated. And that's sort of where Brock Purdy shines. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's kind of the whole thing. Like if you if you flip Purdy and Prescott, I'm not totally sure, even if Prescott is more physically talented, I'm not totally sure how much better the Niners offense gets. But like we said this on the last pod, they're they're on the teams they're on. And if you want to say that Dak is playing better because of what he could theoretically be doing right now, then okay, but he's not within his offense. He's a dink and dunk passer right now because the Cowboys are scared that he's going to turn the ball over like he has the last season and a half. And the Niners aren't scared of that with Purdy. They're going for it on 4th and 4 and letting him throw it because Kyle Shanahan trusts him to do the right thing and to make the right throw and to accurately make that throw and to not take a bad sack. And there's all these boxes that you want to check if you're playing quarterback, and Purdy checks a lot of them, and it's a good day for it. So that's what I think if you're comparing the quarterback matchup here, and you want to say that Dallas has the better quarterback, they don't objectively, because you have to take into context the coaching and the system. And right now, Dak is not playing quarterback as well in the context of the Cowboys as Purdy is within the context of the 49ers.
Yeah. I mean, Purdy's got the best QBR in the league. Yards per attempt, he's at 9.1, which is like,
stats.
which is crazy.
Mm.
Prescott, in terms of yards per attempt, is at 6.7. That's 20th in the league. That's behind Justin Fields, Geno Smith, Sam Howell, Jordan Love. It's just above Anthony Richardson and Josh Dobbs. Again, like numbers don't always tell the entire story. Like Brock Purdy's the highest rated quarterback in the league, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that he hasn't thrown an interception yet.
Mm-hmm.
Dak Prescott's 13th in rating. I don't know. Like Prescott's ninth in QBR, Brock Purdy's first.
If you flipped their numbers, if you just pick them up and switch them, people are calling for Sam Darnold for the 49ers and calling Dak Prescott the MVP. Fact. Sure. Fact. Like, that's just exactly how it would go.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like, I think the point, like who's the better quarterback, I mean, that's a very subjective discussion, and it sort of depends on your criteria and whether or not you're weighing career and resume and all that stuff. But I think if you're just looking at this season, who's played better football, I don't think you can make the case that Prescott's been better than Brock Purdy so far this year. So again, like people want a degree of difficulty and all that. I think Kyle Shanahan made a good point when he talked to the media yesterday. We're recording this Thursday. On Wednesday, Shanahan was asked about, the criticism of Purdy, and Shanahan basically said, like, yeah, just like watch the film. Like Shanahan just went watch more ball to everybody. But it was just, like, I think it's just watch him play, man. All you got to do is like just watch really closely.
That's
like
it.
Watch what the smart football people are saying when they break down his film. And
Dan
even
Orlovsky.
you got a tweet from Dan Orlovsky today.
Yeah, no big deal. Me and Dan like this. He won't come on the pod, but that's fine. He talks about this, how the 49ers used to stretch defenses horizontally. Now they're stretching defenses horizontally, but also vertically, because Purdy is willing and able to throw the ball down the field in ways that Jimmy Garoppolo was not. So that's forcing and then he drew this big line and basically showing that defenses have to cover Christian McCaffrey hanging out near the line of scrimmage on one sideline, and Brandon Ayuk 25 yards down the field near the other sideline. And how basically that is like 50 plus yards of field that teams have to cover because the Niners offense is so dynamic, and it's dynamic now because they have a quarterback that can do more than throw it into the middle of the field between the hashes. And like, if that's not a sign that you have better quarterback play than what they've been getting, then I don't know what is, man. And it's Dan Orlovsky saying it. It's JT O'Sullivan saying it. It's Kurt Benkert, 49ers legend. He talks about it and how well Purdy's playing.
I think the way Purdy's viewed in the NFL, like among talent evaluators and GMs and coaches, is vastly different than the way he's viewed by a lot of like media types.
Yes.
So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the good thing about this is like we get to watch it happen. We get to watch Purdy play the Cowboys again, and he outplayed Dak Prescott in the playoffs last year. I think that's pretty fair to say. Not that Purdy was like amazing, but he didn't turn the ball over where Prescott did, and it more or less cost the Cowboys that game.
Yep.
Should we take a quick break, a edited in break that the people streaming will not get, but take a quick break and then do our prize picks?
Yeah, we also have to do a what's on tap.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, goddamn right I am. All right, what's on tap? Sponsored by Cooperage Brewing. Can I tell you something that's not on tap?
What's that?
Cowboys tight end Jake Ferguson doing anything substantial in this game?
You're just out on Jake Ferg?
I'm out. So every week we do at the NFL Wires, we do this best bets thing where we have to go through and we have to pick a prop from our team's game and write about it. Jake Ferguson, the Cowboys tight end. This is I know this is not a betting segment, but this is if you're into sports betting, here's some free money.
Handed it out. Free money.
Handing it out. Free money. Jake Ferguson is, according to BetMGM, his longest reception is over or under 15 and a half yards. The 49ers this season have only given up, I believe it's 10 catches of 15 and a half, of 16 yards. That's what I was looking for. They've only given up 10 catches of 16 yards or more. None of them have been to a tight end. And tight ends this season, my page is not loading. So I'm just, I was trying to stall and now it's just gone entirely. That's sick.
That hotel Wi-Fi.
Basically, the Niners, the tight ends can't move the ball against 49ers. So I'm going to go less than 15 and a half yards on Jake Ferguson's longest catch. That's on tap.
Okay, that's on tap. One thing I'm interested to see, and like the numbers didn't really back it up from early in the game before he left with that ankle injury, but just watching, I remember watching that game last year, the playoff game, and Tony Pollard looked like a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like when he left, it felt like it gave the 49ers like a decided advantage. Like it was a big loss for the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. And I think they felt it throughout the rest of the game. But like, I want to see what Tony Pollard looks like because we haven't seen a tailback really have a great game against the 49ers just yet. And I think if there's one that might, like Tony Pollard sort of fits that profile because he's somebody who can potentially outrun the 49ers linebackers. Like he's one of the rare running backs who could even pose a mismatch to the Niners linebackers, who are, I think, unquestionably the best duo in the league right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's probably going to have a big game for the Cowboys to win because I think it's going to be a defensive game. I think it's going to feel a lot like the playoff game last year.
I agree.
Where it's going to be ugly offensively. There's going to be a lot of plays made defensively. And I think the team that runs the ball better and has more success controlling the ball and the tempo of the game and all of that is going to win. And obviously that starts with slowing Tony Pollard. And I think he's one of the better running backs in the league, at least when he's right. And so given that the 49ers, that he left that game last year and the 49ers didn't have to deal with him for 4 quarters, I'm curious, like my what's on tap would be what's his impact on the game, and because he's gonna have to have like a big game for the Cowboys to win. And if the 49ers limit him, I just don't see any way that Dallas comes to Levi's and pulls off the upset.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. And because of that, I think a big Fred Warner game's on tap. And that might be in slowing down Tony Pollard, but it might also be in patrolling that short area of the field where Dak Prescott has thrown it a lot this year. It might be Fred Warner against CeeDee Lamb a lot in between the hashes and between the numbers in that short, 0 to 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage kind of area. And Prescott has kind of lived there this year. He's going to feed CeeDee Lamb a lot. He's going to try and feed Tony Pollard a lot. He's going to try and hit Jake Ferguson, his tight end in that area. And I think that a lot of that is going to come down to Fred Warner. And it might also mean Warner getting home on a couple of blitzes if the 49ers defensive line is not being impactful like we saw in week 2 against the Rams. So I'm expecting a big Fred Warner game, kind of like we saw in the playoffs. Remember last year in the playoff game, he was all over as a run defender, but then that had that sick play where he faked a blitz and then went back and caught up to CeeDee Lamb to knock a pass away.
I was just going to mention that. I forgot if it was against Lamb or not, but I think it was like around the goal line, right? Mm-hmm. Like he started
it was
at
a huge
the line
play.
of scrimmage and then sprinted back to the seam and broke up the play to CeeDee Lamb. Was it a third down? I think it might have been a third down. Either way, it would have been a huge
it was
play
a big
in the game
play.
had the Cowboys come up with it.
It was either a second or third and long.
Yeah, it was just an example of just how good Fred Warner is, particularly in coverage. There was only 1 touchdown in the game last year.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey.
CMC.
I think a Christian McCaffrey touchdown is on tap. I'm going to go out on that limb.
So you think he's going to? I feel like I keep screwing this up. I need to go back and look at the notes.
Okay.
For the McCaffrey touchdown.
13 consecutive games.
13. So 14 is a team record. Right?
No, he already broke the team record.
Oh, he already broke the team. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
12 is the team record, held by Jerry Rice. Shockingly.
With his next game where he has a rushing and receiving touchdown, McCaffrey would have the second most games in the NFL with 1 of each. With 14, like NFL history. And Marshall Faulk
won?
Yeah, Marshall Faulk's won with 15.
Wow.
So Christian McCaffrey he needs 2 more games with a rushing and receiving touchdown, which I think will probably happen this season, to have more games with a rushing and receiving touchdown in the same game than anybody else in league history.
That's nuts, dude. That's so crazy.
That's wild. Offensive player of the year so far? CMC?
Yeah, dude. I think he's the MVP so far.
Ooh, that's a take.
Like it's through 4 weeks.
Yeah.
But just when you kind of look at the quarterbacks on the teams that are good, it's like Vikings, no. Chargers, Tua is, I guess. But dude, McCaffrey leads the league in scrimmage yards. He's tied for the league lead in scrimmage touchdowns. I don't know. I think if you're gonna make a case for a running back, I think he's got a really good case through 4 weeks. Can I do another what's on tap?
Yeah, hold on. On CMC, all of his games have been good, like extremely good.
Even the Chiefs game where he was barely involved, it was like, oh, okay, he's just the best offensive player now.
These are just his stat lines for this season, the 4 games this season. Week 1 at Pittsburgh, 22 runs, 152 yards, a touchdown, and 3 catches, 17 yards. At the Rams, 20 carries, 116 yards, a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Against the Giants, 18 carries, 85 yards, a touchdown, 5 catches, 34 yards. And against Arizona, 20 carries, 106 yards, 3 touchdowns, 7 catches, 71 yards, and a touchdown, 4 touchdowns total.
Wild.
him and Raheem Mostert, oddly enough, lead the league in scrimmage touchdowns so far.
Yeah. Armo's ball. Shout out to our guy. On this line, Ernesto, our guy in the chat, said if CMC or asked if CMC wins MVP, does it even make a difference on how running backs getting squeezed out? No. I think it'll force teams, not force teams, but I think it would be used by teams to go, well, look at everything he does as a receiver. If you can offer that, then we will pay you.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility that running backs just start to catch the ball more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think running backs in college will be like, if I'm going to make any hay in the NFL, I have to be a pass catcher too.
I kind of wonder if we're going to start to see at the high school level, maybe like those really good athletes who used to be running back saying, hey, I want to play receiver. And then when they get to college, moving to running back. Or halfway through college, moving to, or something like that, where they have that background as a receiver.
Yeah, I think that might be the next chapter of this whole thing, right? It's like the games constantly evolve, positions constantly evolve, and I don't think the running back is ever going to just die. Like, teams are always going to have running backs. Teams are always going to run the ball. But it's the running backs who have no value in the passing game that are going to be aged out.
Right. Derrick Henry. Yeah,
and it's not to say that those players haven't had great careers or they don't deserve.
Yeah, Derrick Henry's a Hall of Famer.
Huge paychecks at any point. Mm-hmm. It's just when it comes to the league and its valuation of running backs, they're going to do it. They're going to pay players who really contribute in the passing game and open everything up in the ways that Christian McCaffrey does, because that's sort of, being able to run the ball is only so valuable. Like, what makes the 49ers such a difficult offense to stop is how multiple they can be, how they can do so many different things with one personnel grouping. Whereas like if they were only good at running the ball, then they would be a hell of a lot easier to defend, but they're good at both. And George Kittle, great in the block, great. I mean, we haven't seen George Kittle really do anything yet in the passing game. We don't even know if he's out there.
Okay, you're stepping on my what's on tap.
Okay, but my point is like the ability to do both is what makes you a valuable player offensively. And like we're seeing with even receivers like run blocking, right? Like that's super valuable to the 49ers.
Yep.
So anyway, that's where I think the running back market conversation is going, is that the dudes who contribute in the passing game are still going to get paid. There's still a place for those guys. It's just the dudes that only contribute to the running game that are just not going to get paid.
I agree. I think George Kittle is going to play this week. I think a George Kittle game is on tap.
Think he's going to be active?
Yeah, I think George Kittle's going to be active this week. No, look, I don't believe in Leighton Vander Esch, the Cowboys' star linebacker. I don't believe in, or star, quote unquote, the Cowboys' best linebacker. I don't believe in him in coverage. And I think we're going to get a couple of plays where Purdy's under duress. I think he's going to be under duress a lot. I also think a Brock Purdy interception's on tap, his first of the year. But I think he's going to be under duress a lot. And I think the Cowboys are going to do, and Dan Quinn is going to do everything that he can to make sure Christian McCaffrey is not involved. And that's going to probably mean George Kittle one-on-one a lot with a guy like Leighton Vander Esch. And I think Purdy's going to find him, and I think Kittle's going to have a really good game.
Be nice. Hasn't had a good game yet.
Kittle bit got a whole segment on the last pod.
It's such a good bit.
It's really good.
I mean, I enjoy it. I don't know if the listeners enjoy it as much as I.
Hey, maybe if he worked on his game, instead of organizing TEU.
Even like I mean, it's a funny bit because you watch like any big running play, really, and we say this about Kyle Juszczyk too, but any big running play, there's usually a perfect George Kittle block involved.
It's just teach tape. He's got his hands under the pads. He's got the defender turned 90 degrees toward the goal line. It's just textbook every time. And
even the like Christian, the swing pass McCaffrey touchdown against the Cardinals, where McCaffrey just somehow it looked like he didn't even see the defender, but he jumped over him anyway. George Kittle had a great block on that play, sealing the lane on the outside. But I just love the bit that, like, no, you watch the 49ers play closely, you just see George Kittle throwing hellacious block after hellacious block, and he's not contributing at all in the passing game. And it's like, where's George? Should George retire?
Is George Kittle washed? Some are asking.
Is he even out there? God.
Oh.
He was also wide open for at least a couple plays. JT O'Sullivan had a good breakdown of it, and he was complaining about, because he has George Kittle on his fantasy team.
Same.
Purdy's read to that play where Christian McCaffrey was tackled. I think it was inside the 5-yard line in the first half. George Kittle was wide open on the right side of the field, like it looked like a deep seam route or corner route. I forget which one. Just completely uncovered, but the read very clearly was to the left, and McCaffrey was open early in the read and just missed Kittle, because he was just like, I'm just going to hit CMC, arguably like the offensive player of the year / MVP right now. Just, he's open, I'm going to hit him. And I think that's another funny bit of Purdy criticism, is like, oh, he misses open guys. It's like, well, like, can we say he's missing open guys without acknowledging what his reads are? And it's like, if he's getting a first down to Christian McCaffrey on the left side, is it really inexcusable that he's like not hitting George Kittle for the 30-yard touchdown, even though arguably the best offensive player in the league right now is wide open to his left, and he didn't make it to the read on his right? Like,
right.
We're gonna kill Brock Purdy for that? Okay. I'm just not gonna pretend to know what his reads are. Watch more tape, guys.
Dude,
no ball.
Nailed it. Hey, do you have the Prize Picks PDF by chance?
The read?
Yeah.
This is high quality podcasting content.
Dude, I'm sorry.
I
thought I had it, and I don't.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
this
just
is
scrolling
fine.
through emails. It's all good.
Ernesto in the chat asked what a bad Brock Purdy game looks like. And he asked if he struggled, what would you guess the reason would be? It would be because there's a pass rush that gets home with 4 and drops 7 into coverage. And some of those balls he got away with against the Giants, he doesn't get away with. And all of a sudden his stat line that looks really good has 2 or 3 interceptions on it and is more reflective of the type of game that he had early on in that one. So that's why I think he would struggle. And I think it would look like more of an issue for him, because you would see, I think, a couple of turnovers on his stat line. So that's
I think there's that. I think he could miss some downfield throws.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he could have sorry, I'm trying to send you this.
I got it.
Send you the first half of the okay, great. High quality podcasting content. So if Brock struggles, I think it's a combination of turnovers, like you said, but I also think there's a chance that he misses some throws, maybe like he did against the Rams, like downfield. It's like, man, instead of a touchdown or a goal to go situation or a field goal, they're punting.
Right.
Yeah. Like, that's, that could be a huge difference in what's likely to be a 1-score game.
Yep. I would agree. All right, let's get to our Prize Picks. Prize Picks has been super fun. It is daily fantasy, and it's super easy. So you download the Prize Picks app, or you go to prizepicks.com/candlestick. And it's not you against like a shark or a pro or anything like that. It's just you against a number. So instead of betting against thousands of other players and stuff, instead of battling thousands of players and stuff, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. It's super easy. So let's run through our picks for this week. I have put together a 6-player entry, and I feel really, really good about where I'm at, Chris.
6 is a lot. You're overachieving AF on vacation right now.
Yeah,
I only
thanks,
have
man.
3, and mine are not like deep dive over then, or sorry, more than or less than. Like mine are pretty straightforward.
I really like the flex plays because it allows you to miss one and still recoup some of your winnings. That's great.
Yeah.
I rock a flex play.
I swing for the fences with the power plays, and it's frankly my record has.
Well, that's the difference. You played JUCO ball, I didn't, and that's why. No,
Played
okay,
is
so
played is. I don't know if that's necessarily
you
correct.
wore a uniform for JUCO ball? I didn't.
I practiced for a season in JUCO.
Okay, so I think we both have this one. Dak Prescott less than 241 and a half passing yards. And I also have Brock Purdy less than 241 and a half passing yards because there's two really good defenses. And I think both teams are going to try and run the ball. They're going to try and mitigate each other's pass rush with the run game. So I believe we're going to see both quarterbacks go less than 241 and a half yards.
Yeah, I have the same one. I have Purdy less than 241 and a half and Dak less than 241 and a half or fewer, whichever vernacular you prefer. Um, yeah, to your point, I don't have any like great analysis other than I just think it's going to be a defensive game and it's going to be really
Yeah.
hard to throw against both teams. Although the one pick I have, the other pick I have, so the two quarterbacks throwing for fewer than 241 and a half are two of my picks. Um, I'm going more than 66 and a half receiving yards for CeeDee Lamb
Mm.
because you go through his games so far this season. He's been in the slot quite a bit, and again in week 2 and week 3, against the Jets and Cardinals respectively, he had 46 snaps out of the slot in each of those games. And I would say if you are looking for a weakness in the 49ers secondary from a
Mm-hmm.
coverage standpoint, I think it's probably the slot. Like they're probably trying to figure out, is Isaiah Oliver the best matchup for CD or is it Diamador Lenore? And I just think like I don't think much of the Cowboys passing game as a whole, but I
Yeah.
do like CeeDee Lamb in the slot against Isaiah Oliver or even Diamador Lenore. And
Mm-hmm.
66 and a half isn't like a huge number.
No.
I just think that's an area where if I'm the Cowboys, I'm putting CD in the slot, trying to make hay against linebackers. I know Fred Warner is obviously the best coverage linebacker in the league, but I think that's where the Cowboys are going to have the most success against the Niners offensively is either
Mm-hmm.
with Tony Pollard or with CeeDee Lamb in the slot. So I'm going more than 66 and a half yards for him.
Okay, I'm going more than 55 and a half for Brandon Ayuk. Again, that just doesn't seem like a huge number. And if he's getting 6 or 7 targets, I think he's catching 6 or 7 balls. And if he's doing that, he's going more than 55 and a half receiving yards. So I'm leaning into that, even though I'm going the less than 241 and a half with Purdy. Um, I have George Kittle less than 41 and a half receiving yards, even though I think it's going to be a big George Kittle game. I went less than 41 and a half receiving yards. I'm not really sure why. I genuinely don't know why I did that. Jake Ferguson, don't ride that one. Fade that one. Jake Ferguson, I'm going to go less than 26 and a half receiving yards for the reasons that I tried to lay out earlier. And then Tony Pollard and Christian McCaffrey, combined touchdowns of more than 1.5, rushing and receiving. I'm taking that because as you laid out, Tony Pollard looked like a little bit of a problem for the 49ers, and the Cowboys are going to feed him a lot. And Christian McCaffrey has a touchdown in basically every game he's ever played with San Francisco. So I need one of them to either score twice or each one to score once.
Steven Ruiz, somebody named
Yeah,
Steven
I'm
Ruiz
sure it's him.
is commenting. If it's him, like we had him on the pod. I think someone on Twitter was upset we had him on the pod because they disagree with his Purdy takes. We
It's
obviously
probably this guy.
disagree with his Purdy takes, but if this is Steven Ruiz, who's of the Ringer and does
No
the quarterback
chance.
rankings,
Zero
no
chance.
chance. Well, if it is, he's invited back on and we can have the discussion with him because I think that would be good content and it would be a good discussion. I like the thing I can't do is like, oh, this guy disagrees with my football take, so obviously he's a moron. Can't do that. Like we all can like disagree about football takes, but like, not necessarily go the personal attack route.
No, I think Steven's fine. I don't.
He would be great on the pod. Again,
You know,
he was great on the pod.
actually, you know what? I hate him.
Hate that guy for his football takes. All
Just
right.
know nothing about him as a human and just hate him.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways,
Brock Purdy
isn't
below
that
Mac Jones? Are you kidding me?
hey? Can we
It is
real
wild,
quick?
though.
Hey, real quick. Can we? I want to. I'm so happy the 49ers didn't draft Mac Jones.
I mean,
It would be so boring. Can you imagine how boring the last couple of years would have been?
no, it would have been bad. It would have been like I kind of think the Niners are boring now, but like not in a bad way. Like if they would have picked Mac Jones, it would have been a disaster. And there would have been the opposite. There would have been controversy. There would have been all this stuff. Like I think nobody would have had the fan base turn on them faster than Mac Jones. Like it would have been early years
the
Alex
second
Smith
he got
like
drafted.
20. Yeah. Yeah. Like do you remember the Niners put out a social media video of all the reactions of the Trey Lance draft, of the Trey Lance pick, and everyone was so happy. The reason why everyone was so happy is because the pick was not Mac Jones.
Right.
And I think everybody should correctly feel validated in that take based on how it's gone with New England.
Yep.
It's been an outright disaster with the Pats so far.
Yeah, but he made a Pro Bowl and did the gritty in the Pro Bowl. So, go to prizepicks.com/candlestick and use code candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/candlestick and use code candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Do they have a fewer than gritties for Mac Jones on Sunday? Can we go less than
fewer
0.5?
than half? Fewer than half? Yeah.
Half a gritty?
Yeah. Just he does half a gritty. I'm like, dang it. He did a half gritty. He did a grid. All right. I think the 49ers are going to win 20-16.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one.
They're going to win 20-16, and Mike McCarthy is going to kick a field goal from the 49ers 21 on a 4th and 4 with like 3.5 minutes left.
And 2 timeouts. Just like full tilt mode. Yeah. Do you remember, I think it was 2013 when the Niners won every single game 23-17?
Yes.
That's where I'm going. Niners 23, Cowboys 17.
I love that for you. Yeah, I think it's just going to look a lot like the playoff game did.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The least surprising thing to me would be like the game is basically decided on a Dak Prescott interception.
Yeah, I could see that. Isn't that kind of how the playoff game went?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yep. Wouldn't shock me at all.
I don't think it's the real Steven Ruiz, guys, in the chat.
Yeah, I think it's probably not, but it's a great bit. Really good.
To have the devotion to create a fake Steven Ruiz account in YouTube specifically to participate in the chat and ask if he can take all the viewers on Brock Purdy and Prize Picks is great.
Really good. All right, I gotta run.
Yep. Enjoy vacation, bro.
Can't wait for this football game. It's gonna be super fun.
Yep.
All right. Subscribe, rate, review.
Yep. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, notification bell, like button, all those things.